We are Kentucky, Tennessee living, and we are here at the Reelfoot National Wildlife Refuge Headquarters and Visitor Center. This center is part of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Department of the Interior, located at Reelfoot Lake in Tiptonville, Tennessee. Come along with us as we discover the history of Reelfoot Lake. The National Wildlife Refuge System. The National Wildlife Refuge System is the world's largest networks of lands managed specifically to support fish and wildlife. The National Wildlife Refuge System conserves habitats and ecosystems that support 700 species of birds, 220 species of mammals, 250 reptile and amphibian species, 200 species of fish, countless species of insects, as well as associated plants communities. The mission of the National Wildlife Refuge System is to administer a national network of lands and waters for the conservation, management, and where appropriate, restoration of the fish, wildlife, and plant resources and their habitats within the United States for the benefit of present and future generations of Americans. Managed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the National Wildlife Refuge System encompasses more than 560 national wildlife refuges in the U.S. and its territories, with at least one refuge in each of the 50 states and within an hour's drive of most major cities. Every year, more than 41 million people visit at least one national wildlife refuge. Reelfoot National Wildlife Refuge. Many wildlife refuges, including this one, are located along the broad north-south migration routes, called flyways, used by millions of migratory birds every year. Reelfoot National Wildlife Refuge, established in 1941, was created specifically as a sanctuary for migratory birds. Today, Reelfoot National Wildlife Refuge is managed along with 4 other refuges, Chickasaw, Lower Hatchie, and Lake Isom, as part of the West Tennessee National Wildlife Refuge Complex. Reelfoot's NWR's 10,428 acres lies within 3 miles of the eastern shore of the Mississippi River. Adjacent to the Reelfoot National Wildlife Refuge are 2 other public use parcels, Reelfoot Lake State Park and Reelfoot Wildlife Management Area. A Reelfoot tradition invention. Because of its shallow water and submerged trees, Reelfoot Lake proved to be a challenge for boaters. Local boat builder Arthur Boone Calhoun solved this problem by inventing a new type of sturdy, flat-bottomed boat. Another resident, Fred Allen, designed bow-facing oars for use in Calhoun's Reelfoot Lake boat. Meanwhile, newcomer Victor Glodo, Jr. perfected the Reelfoot Lake duck call. With these and related ventures, hunting and fishing became mainstays of the Reelfoot economy. The Glodo duck call. The most famous duck calls in the world, each an intricately carved work of art, were tested and popularized at Reelfoot Lake. Victor Glodo, Jr. moved here in 1891 to continue his family's tradition of crafting duck calls from walnut, birch, reed, and lead. By 1931, Field and Stream described Glodo's Reelfoot Lake duck calls as the best model of all. Did you know Reelfoot Lake was formed by a big earthquake over 200 years ago? From December 1811 to February 1812, a series of over 1,800 earthquakes shook the region. The quakes churned the Mississippi River so hard it appeared to run backwards, and people felt the tremors as far away as New York and Boston. The New Madrid earthquakes, named after the small town they destroyed, caused hundreds of acres of cypress swamps and bottomland forests to sink. Reelfoot Lake formed as the Mississippi River, Reelfoot Creek, and the Bayou de Chien flooded the sunken area, submerging the forest. Receding waters left a ridge that now divides Reelfoot Lake from the Mississippi. 17 bears. The first Reelfoot settlers of European descent were anglers, hunters, and trappers, competing for the best hunting and fishing grounds. In 1822, one of these early settlers, the famous frontiersman and politician Davy Crockett, reported that he and a neighbor killed 17 extremely fat bears in 1 week. A sporting paradise. By the mid-1800s, duck camps and clubhouses had formed to capitalize on the excellent fishing and hunting surrounding this unusual submerged forest. Club members came to Reelfoot Lake for its easy access and plentiful supply of fish and wildlife. Many local families made their living from the lake, either as guides and managers for the sporting clubs or as market hunters. Market hunters shot and shipped railcar loads of ducks, geese, and swans to commercial markets in northern cities and beyond. Fine restaurants began serving Reelfoot waterfowl, and wealthy women sported egret plumes and richly colored wood duck feathers in their fashionable hats. By 1916, widespread market hunting and habitat loss had caused migratory waterfowl populations to drop alarmingly across the United States and Canada. Some species had been hunted to extinction. In response, Congress passed the Migratory Bird Treaty Act of 1918, establishing strict limits on market hunting. While sports hunting at Reelfoot Lake continued, market hunting was no longer allowed. The bicycle spoke fishing reel. Who invented the fishing reel? According to local lore documented in 1940's article, Ripley's Believe It or Not, the first bait casting reel used by fishermen was invented at Reelfoot Lake sometime before 1900. The reels were built from bicycle spokes soldered together. A chrome hub required a thumb brake, and some had leather patches for slowing the speed of the reel. Lake boat oar. The double elbow in the middle of this oar allows the rower to pull the oars in the customary fashion, but move the boat forward instead of backward. This design also allows the oars to be less noisy and easily stored out of the way. A rough ride to public ownership. Reelfoot National Wildlife Refuge was created in 1941, but it is a road to preservation as a public land was a rough ride. Early struggles included boundary disputes, lawsuits, night riders, and even kidnapping and murder. Reelfoot's history also illustrates the history of the wildlife conservation and habitat preservation and restoration in the United States. Prior to 1900, people of the Reelfoot region made their living hunting, fishing, trapping, and serving as guides without questioning the ownership of the lake. Over a period of time, however, several private interests claimed title to the lake, and attempts were made to drain it for lumber and agriculture. Eventually, the West Tennessee Land Company was formed, and its claim to ownership placed major restrictions on the local residents whose livelihood depended upon the lake. Then came the night riders. Wearing masks and roaming at night, these self-appointed vigilantes protested the monopoly's hold with violence. They made anonymous threats, set fire to the fish stock, raided offices, and eventually kidnapped 2 land company employees and killed one of them. 8 men were tried and convicted of murder, but the case was reversed by the Tennessee Supreme Court. No one was ever punished for the crime. In direct response to this bizarre affair, the Tennessee State Legislature passed an act creating a state game and fish preserve at Reelfoot Lake and giving the entire property to the state for public use, though legal challenges continued for decades. The upper third of Reelfoot Lake was eventually leased by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in 1941 to create Reelfoot National Wildlife Refuge. Logging was a major commercial venture in the Reelfoot region between 1865 and 1925. Refuge employees cleaned up debris following a clearing operation to convert a low-lying scrub timber area into a seasonal waterfowl impoundment, 1966. Refuge employee Guy Hogg teaches aspiring biologists about the Refuge waterfowl banding program, 1964. We at Kentucky Tennessee Living want to thank you for watching our series on Reelfoot Lake in Tiptonville, Tennessee. Don't forget to hit that like button, as the more likes we receive, the more likely YouTube is to suggest our videos to other viewers. Also, to receive notice when we upload a new video, be sure to subscribe and click that bell for notification. We thank you for continuing to support Kentucky Tennessee Living as we bring to you the history of Kentucky and Tennessee.